Hi, my name's Anna Beckman, and I'm going to be talking about the book Breaking Open, in which I've written a chapter. This is a book about spiritual emergencies, and I describe, and 13 other people describe their own personal experiences with this sort of crisis, which is both a kind of psychological disintegration and a spiritual awakening. So both really terrifying and very enlightening at the same time. And so because of that, very confusing. I was only 18 at the time, and so because of that, I think the confusion was even more, was just really great because I had really not had much experience in life. And so it was a real sort of tearing away of my reality and having to like restructure everything from the beginning again. And what's really interesting to me is that now in this time, there is a very similar thing happening collectively. It's interesting walking around the streets and not seeing what I'm used to seeing, not seeing things being open, not seeing people around or having the same interactions as we're used to having, and how similar that is to the kind of internal crisis of a psychosis. I use the word psychosis because that's the definition that was given to me, and to which, to a large extent, does make sense, and yet also does not hold all the beauty and the insight that this process gave me. It only medicalizes it and sort of diagnoses it. So I think it's really important to hold both sides. And so I think at this moment in time, it's really a really sort of salient time because we're having a kind of collective crisis. And there's a sense of things that what happened for me is that things that I took for granted in my life. So the fact that I knew how to talk to my mother, or the fact that I knew when to take a shower, or the fact that I knew how to just open a door handle, that all these things fell away. Like my entire inner landscape completely was torn apart. And although I was having these amazing experiences of understanding that the world is one and that we are all connected, and this really visceral, not an intellectual understanding, but a really visceral experience of it, there was also a sense of losing reality. And that, I think, is not to quite the same extent, but it's happening to us collectively. So not just things that we took for granted. Like, for example, I'm a mother, so a lot of mothers, their babies, say, like these baby groups that I used to go to, or just the interactions that I used to have on a day-to-day that I never questioned, that could be taken away, that they're gone, and there's what's left is a sort of an existential questioning. Often I think it confronts us with our own fear of dying, and with narratives that we've clung on to, having to die, and we're having to find new narratives to hold on to. And to not to hold on to hopefully help us to navigate in a way that is wider and takes in more of the world and isn't so narrow. That's my hope. That's really my hope for this time. And I know that since this has all begun, this crisis, this collective crisis has begun, I've received a lot of questions about, family members struggling with either what has been called psychosis, or friends saying that people that they know are having spiritual emergencies, or suddenly having like quite intense personal crisis, and so I really think that it's an important time for us to collectively and individually look at these narratives that we've spun for ourselves and for our culture as a whole, and to look at the devastation that this is causing to the world, but also the possibility and the newness and the possibility of rebirth for us all, and how we can begin to interact differently with each other and with ourselves internally. And interestingly, in the chapters, there's quite a few of the crisis, these spiritual emergencies happen during a time of collective crisis. So whether it was Brexit or 9/11, which is when I had mine. And interestingly, it took me years and years to really see that one affected the other. That obviously there was a mirroring going on. So, because mine happened like a couple of weeks afterwards, and then I actually flew to New York, and I went and saw the sort of the smoke still rising from these buildings, and that's sort of as mine was beginning to happen, and the kind of destruction of my old ways of thinking and being, as I talk about it now, I can feel a sense of excitement, which is wonderful, because for so many years it was only terror that I felt then. Terror and awe were the two things. So I'm hoping that that people can find a lot of hope from this book. We discuss the ways in which we come to terms with this new reality that we find ourselves in, each person in the book, and kind of give coping strategies, and it's really interesting to see the similarities in our experiences and in what we needed and what help us now even to kind of maintain a sense of connection and groundedness and vitality, and then when things do get stormy, how do we navigate that? So I'm excited that we'll be launching this book, and if you're going through something like this, or know someone going through something like this, or you're just interested in these sorts of processes, then I really recommend there's some really amazing and beautiful stories there. Thank you. Bye.